Today on The Big Questions, do we need a British Islam? Good morning. I'm Nicky Campbell. Welcome to The Big Questions. Today we're live from Bradford Grammar School in West Yorkshire to debate one very big question. Do we need a British Islam? Welcome, everyone, to The Big Questions. Now, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the United Kingdom. The 2011 census found 2.75 million Muslims in the UK, and their numbers are growing 10 times as fast as the general British population. But there's as much divides as unites British Muslims. Their forebears came from very different parts of the world. Here in Bradford, most Muslims originated from Pakistan. In the East End of London, Bangladeshis predominate, but others emigrated here from the Caribbean or Arab countries or Africa or the Far East. And then there's the converts, 100,000 of them. 2/3 of those are women. Now, what unites them all is where they live now, Britain. And some British Muslims are now asking if the time has come to develop a distinctly British version of Islam. So, we have gathered together Muslim theologians, academics, social activists, scholars, campaigners, and politicians to debate that idea. And you can join in too on Twitter or online by logging on to bbc.co.uk/thebigquestions. Follow the links to our discussion forums, and there's going to be lots of encouragement and contributions for an excellent, lively local audience here in Bradford, where we are live this morning. Do we need a British Islam? Good morning, everybody. Adam Deen, you made a panorama about this, Adam, about a year ago. What would a British Islam be? What would it look like?
It would definitely be an Islam that hasn't been hijacked by extremists and fundamentalists. Unfortunately, one of the greatest challenges that we have right now for Islam is that the dominant reading of Islam is one that has lost all of its beauty and lost its ethical content.
So, what is an extremist? What is a conservative? What is an orthodox Muslim? I mean, these terms are very difficult to define, aren't they?
Yes, they are very difficult. What you will find within the Muslim community now is that there's a tension between sort of the rationalist Muslims and the anti-rationalist Muslims. And unfortunately, the anti-rationalist Muslims that are influenced by, let's say, sort of puritanical readings of Islam, an example of that is Wahhabism, have the upper hand, and there are many reasons why that is. And one of the challenges that...
puritanical Islam? What does it mean, puritanical?
Well, puritanical is a reading of Islam that is literal, which is divorced from ethics. So it's a particular idea that you can only understand good and evil, right and wrong, from religious scripture. And individuals that are, I would deem to be puritanical, have a very literalist understanding of, say, the hadith. And what they want to do is they want to apply...
The sayings of Muhammad. Yeah.
The sayings of the...
I cannot really see the link of this to extremism. Well, we have to appreciate that Islam, likewise Christianity, are universal religion. They are practiced by different races in different countries, and there's no such thing as British Islam, American Islam. Yes, the context is different. Yes, there are British Muslims, American Muslims, but then I find it really problematic to actually paint all Muslims with the same brush and say, you know what, there are like puritanical
well, I don't think
Islam
he's doing that, with respect.
And it's linked to extremism because the reality
Okay, hang on a second. I don't think it's doing that. I'll come back to you, Adam.
It's not a homogeneous.
As you said, Tehmina, Kazi, 1 second, please. Okay, 1 second. I take your point, and you made your point there. It's unfair to tar everyone with the same brush. I want to ask Adam another question in a minute. Tehmina Kazi, British Muslim for Secular Democracy, is conservative, so-called orthodox Muslim, is that a problem, that form of Islam?
Very much so, and in my view there are three elements to a distinctly British Islam. The first one is a respect for a plurality of beliefs, including those that were traditionally taboo, such as identifying as a progressive Muslim. The second element is working together towards the common good as Muslims and non-Muslims in a democratic country.
Exactly.
And the
This is
third
part of
element
Islam.
is respect for modern equality and human rights standards. And sadly, this is where some of the conservative interpretations of Islam have fallen down.
That's the thing.
We'll be that backside in a minute. If you'll forgive me. Forgive me, I just want to get our definitions right, and I will come to you, I promise. Okay. Equalities such as what, forced gender segregation?
Yes, a prime example is the Universities UK guidance on gender segregation in public universities, which a coalition of secular activists and groups, including Muslims, had to work very hard to overturn. And it was later affirmed by the Equality and Human Rights Commission that gender segregation in public universities is unlawful.
Sexual equality, gender equality,
And
those things.
yes, exactly,
okay.
LGBT equality.
Adam, okay, I'm coming. Okay, I promise.
Yeah.
Adam, tell me one theological aspect which you believe is no longer applicable to the modern age.
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to clarify that there's a slightly caricature understanding of what I was saying. I don't think all Muslims are in this predicament. I think that the dominating voices that seem to have the loudest voices within our community are a minority, but these individuals that are pushing this type of reading of Islam. Well, here's an example.
Well, you can ask the Imam. You can ask the Imam.
Yeah, well, there's an example. A majority of these scholars, majority of these individuals that dominate the intellectual Islamic discourse believe that it is legitimate to kill an apostate, someone who has decided to leave the Islamic faith. Now, that is the epitome of irrationality, to kill someone for changing their mind.
Well, what would you ask the Imam? What's your direct question to the Imam?
Well, I mean, would you support such a ruling?
When you're talking about Islam and British Islam, the first thing I'd be asking you, Nikki, is has this question ever been asked about any other faith? Do we ever say, what's the British version of Sikhism, or British version of Judaism, or British version of... So that's the first question I'm going to ask.
Well, I'll answer this question first.
I'm coming to your answer. When we're coming down to the theological arguments, I can come to that. Islam is not just about the theological arguments that are between the jurists. Islam is all about love. Islam is about peace. Islam is about respect.
But that's just lip service. How much love can you have for someone for killing them, for changing their mind?
Okay.
My question to you, do you believe that there is a problem of extremism currently now? Do you believe there is actual problem?
There is
about people like yourself.
There is absolutely...
Well, it's exacerbated by people like Adam.
Extremism exacerbated.
Yeah.
I'll be back with you.
Yeah.
A little bit of parenthesis here.
Yeah, it's a couple of points that need to be explained. First of all, you said we're living in a time where a lot of the Muslims, they're devoid of an ethical element. Hang on, let's answer that bit of your question.
Let Raza finish.
Let Raza
finish.
So you spoke about devoid of the ethical element. We're in West Yorkshire, when we had seen in Yorkshire region where there were floods taking place, was majority Muslims that are helping their fellow citizens. So where's the devoid, being void of the ethical element? So they were driven by their faith. So that's one important element. And secondly, when he talks about this, a vocal minority, the reality is this. From someone like Adam, whose part as an outreach director, which is a laughable title in itself for Quilliam.
That's not a very pleasant thing.
Yeah, and I don't think they're a pleasant organisation. The thing is, for them, it's this. They keep talking about how these people are taking over our country, they're doing this, they're subverting British values, etc. And really, the reality is, if you look at the academic literature, if you look at the reality of young British Muslims, none of that makes sense. And this question of British Islam, you talk to most young British Muslims, they'll tell you, look, I'm on about the weather, I queue up, I have Fish and Chip Friday. How much more do you want me to integrate into this country?
What team do you support?
I'm Arsenal.
Oh, dear. Yeah. OK, Imam, I think you'll agree you had a chance to make that point, and you know what, I'm going to be back to you later on, because we've got a fair bit of time on this morning.
Good.
Now, people will, watching, think that you rather signally did not answer Adam's question. So, to be fair, ask the question again, Adam.
Yeah, please. I mean, do you believe that there is a problem within sort of the religious discourse? There is an element of extremism, and do you think that we should condemn the ruling on apostates, that we should kill them? Do you not think that's a problem?
Absolutely. Let me put it this way: Islam has freedom of choice. and you can choose whether you want to be in Islam or whether out of Islam, and there is no compulsion of bringing somebody into Islam.
No,
Not
into Islam, but if someone is a Muslim who decides not to be a Muslim, do you think they should... Raza, I'll come to you in a minute.
Yeah,
you have to
good,
be patient.
Do come to me.
Do you believe... One second. Do you believe that person should be killed?
You are pinning down one single argument of the jurists,
the majority of the jurists,
of the whole of the Muslims. I personally think that person should not be killed.
Okay, but do you...
If you're asking me about my... Would you let me speak?
I've stopped.
Yeah. as soon as I begin to answer the question...
I'm going to leave. I'll see you all later on. All right? Imam, carry on. I'm going to hear some women in just a second.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Imam, carry on.
I personally think that that person shouldn't be killed, but that's my personal opinion.
That's good. That's good.
Which is great.
My question... Islam is much wider than that. Why are people just... If you was to look at that way, every single faith, every single democracy, they always have one or two caveats that majority of people do not agree with, and they are not looking at the larger picture.
Well, I'm extremely happy that you believe they shouldn't be killed. But do you not believe? Do you not know that majority of the school of thought actually believe that apostates should be killed, and that we need to challenge these ideas?
I'm going to. We're up a little. We're not going to get any further with that. We had a kind of answer. Sahar, what would you like to say? And then I'm going to hear from Yasmin.
I just wanted to say that the majority of Muslims and majority of school of thoughts, they wouldn't say that they should be killed because they should.
No,
there is a main principle in the Quran where it says no compulsion in the religion. That's the reality. But the thing is, like, there's a lot of people like you who feed into this anti-Muslim narrative that Muslims don't accept non-Muslims. They are not willing to engage with them. And we feed back into the rise of this Islamophobia kind of narrative. And who is the victim? Someone like me who is participating with the wider society, engaging, trying to implement the universal values of freedom and justice and pluralism that is not restricted by the way to secularism only. These are universal values.
The universal values,
by
thank you.
Muslims, Christians and many other people.
In just a second, but Adam, you said, I'm sorry to come back to another man, but you did say there, this is the problem. What do you mean, this is the problem?
The problem is that when we accept such doctrines, some theological ideas that we should kill apostates, and for your information, there is a hadith, which is considered to be sahih, that says that kill anyone that changes their religion. And it's accepted by 3 schools of thought, but potentially 4. So you really need to get your facts right. And we have hate preachers, Islamic scholars visiting university campuses that are actually saying, yes, it's okay to kill apostates as long as they meet the conditions. That's like saying it's okay to rape someone as long as they meet the conditions. It's absolutely absurd.
Yasmin, is there a place in modern Britain for any kind of judgment on divorce or marriage or matters of relationships between 2 adult people for Sharia courts?
Absolutely not. This is why we shouldn't have a British Islam. There will not be consensus. I think we've had multiculturalism, we've now got multi-faithism.
What's wrong with Sharia courts?
Sharia courts, are we saying to minority women, not just Muslim women, but best Jewish women when it comes to Beth Deans and other ecclesiastical courts?
But marriage is an act of worship in Islam.
It's an act of worship, it's also a contract, but are we saying that that Muslim women should not have equal access, an equal opportunity to have access to the law in the same way that non-Muslim women do? There is no regulation of Sharia courts.
No one's saying that?
First of all, there's a couple of things. They're not courts, they're arbitration councils in many cases. So important to not caricaturise the whole thing. That's very important.
Can I just come back on that?
You can in a second.
Vital, because the thing
Yasmin,
is,
you can in a second.
I think this is vital, Yasmin, because what happens is we end up having a soundbite discussion, and people need to understand. I would recommend people to actually go do some research. So, for example, the number of Sharia courts is grossly exaggerated. We often get the numbers from a Civitas, research document that says that there were possibly about 80 to 85, but again, mostly were based on online websites. So the thing is, the numbers aren't that clear, they're exaggerated. Secondly, the arbitration councils that aren't legally binding, that's the second thing. But thirdly, when we talk about Sharia courts in this way, what it does is it feeds into a narrative that these people are taking over our country, they're subverting our laws, and that's just not true. And really, it's frustrating that people feed into this narrative.
That's not what she said.
No, that's a big part of it. So these women should not have, they shouldn't have access to, you know, to our courts.
Can I come back?
Hang on, that's important though, because they say they shouldn't have access to courts. Who's saying they shouldn't? The reality is people will go for arbitration within their own community as they do in other places.
The law should overrule everything. The law of the land surely should overrule that. But yes,
yeah, as it does.
Rosa, you've quoted Civitas. I've been doing this work for 30 years. And I have seen over that time that Muslim women are being coerced and policed by their families. And part of it is also the government's fault, the legal aid cuts. So less access to the English courts and actually seeking redress from religious
coercion of women is not a Muslim phenomenon.
No, let me finish.
It's not a Muslim phenomenon.
Then I'm going to hear from Naheed.
I have seen women who said, I don't particularly want to go there, but I'm being told that I have to go there. They don't want to challenge the judgments because they will then be seen to be challenging the word of God.
The coercion of women is not a Muslim phenomenon.
It's not I'm not saying it's a Muslim phenomenon.
Wait, everybody. Wait, everybody. Yasmin, quickly. Then,
if you had heard what I said, I also made reference to Beth Dean's, which are Jewish arbitration tribunals. Now, there were Beth Deans in operation. That was then, you know, Tony Blair's government used the Arbitration Act to extend it to the Muslim community. Why do we need a parallel legal system when we have the English courts who were there? I've seen Muslim tribunals where women have been told to hand over their children to the fathers at the age of 7, which is contained within our religious texts. I've seen women who... confidentiality is not respected.
Okay, Naheed, just on the issue... Okay, very sorry, Yasmin.
Where women are going to have to speak with the perpetrator of potentially, I mean, usually horrific abuse. Yeah. And they are in a room with 4 men and 1 woman sitting behind a
Wait a minute. Naheed.
It's not acceptable.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Can I make a correction? Because I work with women from all backgrounds, not just Muslim women. I'm a Muslim woman, but I work with all other women. What Yasmin just said is more about cultural. It's the oppressions of men comes, you know, we work with domestic women who are facing domestic violence. It's across the board. It's not just Muslim women. So don't try to, and it's what cultural practices we have within our family. I'm dealing with Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, and, you know, the Christian families. We have got those oppressions. So we are not just only working with women from Muslim community. And in terms of Sharia court and Sharia council, some of the women, they feel comfortable going to Sharia court, and that's their choice, and that's the choice they're making.
Yasmin, it's choice.
We are actually dismissing
I'd like to hear from women for a little while, if I may.
I'm really tired of that's cultural, this is religious.
But
if we just got back
but that's the reality.
Religious practice.
We should separate.
Are you saying that Islam
actually,
came in a... Excuse me, please let me finish. Are you saying that Islam came in a context where there was no patriarchy, where there was no misogyny?
And that's what Islam demolished that. We haven't gone back to
Okay, everyone. What about other aspects? I mean, are there any aspects of theology that need to be reinterpreted? I wonder. What about saying that... Sahar, you can maybe come to us on this and explain, because this is something that's maybe misunderstood from people who are out with Islam. A woman's word is worth half that of a man's. How can you, as you know, an independent, intelligent, professional woman, ever accept that?
Okay, so what we have to understand...
the Imam saying, let me answer that one.
No.
If you like, can we get a woman to answer it, please?
I will explain to you. That's the thing, that there are some certain principles in Islam that are applicable in certain contexts. The verse that you mentioned in the Quran, it is mentioned in the Quran, but in a certain context. When the woman doesn't have or she does not have a dependent, she has half of the inheritance. If she is in charge of her house, or she is the responsible for providing livings for her families, then she's got an equal share of inheritance with men. So it's not black and white. It's not applicable.
Her word
in all
is
cases.
worth half that of a man's.
You have to see these cases individually. You know, if
there
the
needs to be 2 women witnesses for 1 man. How can you accept that? Adam, very quickly.
Yeah, I think there's a confusion here. You're talking about a different verse. The sister here is talking about another verse. The verse says that in terms of a contract, or as witnessing, that to every man there must be 2 women. And so these kind of extremist Muslims, puritanical Muslims, believe then, therefore, they extrapolate from that a woman is less than a man. and their witness is less than a man. And it's not controversial, but what they misunderstand is that there's a rationale to the verse. It says, so the other one may remind her. So what that means is that women in those times were not involved in financial transactions. So where we part with the extremists, that we would say modern society, women are engaged in public life, they are involved with financial transactions and they're competent. And we would say that that wouldn't apply today. Whereas extremist Muslims,
and that's
what they would say, they would... Yeah, we're on the same side here. Extremist Muslims...
That's a shame.
Yeah, that's why,
we're on the same side. Can I just say that the biggest driver of Islamophobia, because Raza keeps talking about me perpetuating Islamophobia, the biggest driver of Islamophobia is denial that there is a problem to begin with. That's the biggest problem. And as for his... Sorry, can I just finish? As for his jibe at me and making fun out of my position at Quilliam, that's ironic, given that your leader of your organisation thought that he was persecuted by Mossad because they stole his shoe. And that's ridiculous. So please, keep your comments to yourself.
Maybe though, Raza, that does... maybe it's a serious point there, because a lot of people... Asghar Bukhari, who's certainly a leading light in your organisation... No longer, but he was. A lot of people lampooned him for this, but maybe it does say something about the level of scrutiny and intimidation, that he was absolutely convinced that his shoes were stolen by Mossad, right?
Yeah.
Do you think they were? His shoes were stolen by Mossad?
The thing is, he's been harassed many times, so the thing is, it may be true.
It's really important to talk about this.
But the thing is, what's that got to do with the question, by the way? The thing is...
it might play to a certain sense of a persecution complex if Mossad broke into his house and stole one of his shoes.
The thing is, there's an article in The Guardian about how the Stasi had employed certain tactics of subversion for individuals in the past, even small things. You can read this article, it's in The Guardian, about changing the tea bags in people's homes, making them feel they're losing their minds.
Maybe it might be realistic or sensible if they stole
the harassment of a Muslim activist who speaks out against Israel's occupation of Palestine, who critiques the government on draconian policies, to be honest, harassment of a Muslim like that is not that surprising at all. You talk to most Muslim activists,
but the question is,
they
did
face
they
it all the
steal
time.
his shoe?
And look at what Adam's doing right now, that we're talking about an issue about British Islam, talking about Sharia and stuff, and he brings in this issue. It's ridiculous.
No, I brought it in response to your claim.
It wasn't a claim. Your organisation is a joke.
And now the boot's on the other foot. Let me take it over here. Afshin, is there a problem with Orthodox Islam? Because those who believe that they follow the true path of Islam will find that, and are finding that, grossly offensive. An attack on their credo, an attack on their beliefs.
This is exactly the heart of the problem. If you look at the entirety of Islamic history, there have been more disagreements among Muslims about the truth than agreements. And the current situation is not any different. And again, these terms that we are using, kind of conservative Islam, extremism, they're all extremely contested. What do you mean exactly by conservative Islam? If you mean basically conservative Islam representing kind of exclusionary ideas, if you think that conservative Islam kind of breeding supremacist ideas, yes, this is exactly the heart of the problem. But the same term and the same kind of terminology is understood in so many different ways. And actually this quest to find the truth, actually this has been going on for a very long time. And that actually goes back to the heart of the discussion about if we need kind of British Islam or not. Because if you look at the ways in which Islam has been manifesting itself throughout history, Islam has been able to go and fuse itself with different cultural particularities.
Is that happening in this country?
There's an issue.
Sorry, Raza.
No, sorry, Dr. Shah. The thing is, I appreciate your point about the contesting of terms. That's a very valid point there. But I think what I find about this British Islam argument, for me and for many of the young Muslims I've spoken to, it's the colonial undertones, which is that what does a minority need to do more to fit in with the majority? And integration is not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And in reality, when you look at David Cameron's unhelpful comments about women need to learn English to, fight extremism, but there's no causal connection to extremism, when he talks about having a fund for English, 20 million, but then slashes it by 45 mil the year before, all these different things, when you have, people saying that we're against Sharia, and yet George Osborne introduces the first first ever Islamic bond system in this country under the coalition government. For many Muslims, it goes, there's no consistency from the government.
Because there isn't a single Islamic community in this country representing Islam. And the heart of the problem is there are certain individuals or certain groups.
Do we all have to be the same?
No, but we have to be ethical.
Wait a minute, everybody. Wait a minute, everybody. Be quiet just for a second, please. Be quiet just for a second, please. Tehmina, you've been trying to come in.
Archaic interpretations of religion, particularly those that run counter to gender equality, must be challenged.
What runs counter to gender equality? Because there are many interpretations of this, and I'm sure that Sahar and others would say that this is an outrageous thing to say, but this is about self-expression. I mean, Sahar wearing the veil, that is about equality. That's about her making choices, and that's about freedom of expression and her articulating her religious and political beliefs. So what are you talking about?
We've already talked about gender segregation, but I'm talking about women's empowerment in religious spaces more broadly. If you go to a lot of mosques in the country, they don't even have adequate space for women. So a group of us a few years ago decided to set up our own mosque.
I agree with you.
Sorry, Tehmina, let's just hear Tehmina out.
Which, as far as I'm aware, is the only mosque in the country which has openly LGBT people on the committee, which creates an inclusive space, even for ex-Muslims to come, if they want to come to our events and to listen from our perspectives. So we need an inclusive space that respects different viewpoints.
Let's talk about women in Islam now. Naz Shah, we haven't heard from Naz yet. I promise you, Sahar, we'll be back with you. Let's talk about women in Islam. And anyone wants to make a point about women's position in Islam, please do put your hand up. Lady there in the second row, Naz, I'm going to be right with you. A quick point. Good morning to you.
Good morning. What I don't understand is you live in Britain, right? So your loyalty, as far as I'm concerned, should be to Britain. You should abide by the laws of the land. So why are we even talking about Sharia councils? They should not even be here. You have issues. You have laws that are here that protect equality for women.
We've heard the answer to that. We've heard the very articulate answer to that from Raza. But gentlemen, there with your hand up. Yeah,
so,
you.
Everyone seems to have these conflicting points on the front row, and it's like, what if I didn't know anything about Islam? Yeah. What Muslim do I talk to find out? It seems like it depends what Muslim you talk to, you get a different version of Islam.
That's what Dr. Shah
It's pluralism, isn't it? There are many different forms of Islam. And that's why this term, the Muslim community, is so meaningless. Because there are so many different communities. It's about human beings. Naz Shah. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're MP for this neck of woods,
absolutely. First of all, welcome to my constituency.
It's lovely. I love it here.
It's good to have you here.
So what about women in Islam? Is there a problem?
I'm going to make a few points because I've been listening attentively to everybody and what everybody's had to say. And let me be really, really clear. In terms of women and Sharia courts, yes, there is an issue where women have, and I am aware of women that have gone to Sharia courts that have been encouraged to go back to violent partners. That has happened. But let's not confuse that with religion.
Well done.
Let me be really clear about it. Okay? Second, I sit here as a woman who was very anti-Muslim men, was very anti-Islam because of my cultural upbringing, because of the experiences of my mother and because of the experiences that I had.
You had a forced marriage, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. However, 15 years ago, when I met some good Muslims who actually taught me about what real Islam was, I then learnt about Islam. And I don't have, and I really, really struggle with the fact that, the lady over here saying we've got a law. Let me be clear, I campaigned nationally against the inequalities in the British justice system when it comes to women. So don't tell me that is just an Islamic phenomenon, because the British justice system is not equal to women. And neither is any country. We have got inequality across the
Shah,
Let me finish,
no, this is important. Can I just put this point in? It's all about direction of travel.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
So let's be clear. In terms of Sharia courts, in terms of where they act as mediatories, where there are bad practices, absolutely we need to rule that out. We need to make sure women should not be encouraged to go back to violent partners. Women should not be persecuted. Children should be held with respect, and so should women. They should be taught with equality. Now, coming back, and before you tell me that I'm personalising this, Adam, because I will not have that. What I will say, though, as for Quilliam Foundation, and I will name the organisation, for me, Only yesterday, I think it was, I read that the Quilliam Foundation have been knocked back by 45 institutes in Australia who refused to engage with them. Only yesterday, I was tweeted... Sorry, can I just answer? I've given you the respect. I've given you the respect to listen to you, and I expect that in return. Going back to the Quilliam Foundation without people, let's be clear. We have the Quilliam... I was tweeted yesterday with, as a member of the Home Affairs Select Committee, I took evidence from Quilliam. And I asked Quilliam, and I put this out again, once again, the Quilliam Foundation sit here and tell us that we are in denial. We are in denial of what exactly? To me, the Quilliam Foundation is stripped of all credibility when it says we are in denial of things, when actually in Bradford there is no denial. There is an issue of radicalisation. There is an issue of safeguarding. There are issues where people, well, the likes of Daesh, reach into our homes through social media, through the internet. That is, nobody is denying that.
And the thing is,
what we are different, where we are different, is our responses to that issue.
We will address some of those issues of radicalisation and security in a few moments. Vitally important. It behoves me to give Adam a response to what you said.
Well, thanks for that. It was very cute. But what I would say is that you said it's got nothing to do with religion. When we say that religion has something to do with Sharia courts and partners going back to their spouses because of, and they're still a victim of domestic violence, you say that we have to make a distinction with religion, but the whole point of going to a Sharia council is because of religion. And one of the reasons they used to justify them returning back to their abusive partners is because they believe the Quran mandates beating women. So, yes, not all cases, but there are some cases, and that we must... One second, let me finish. So there is a sense of denial here that there is a problem in the way that we read the Quran. I don't believe that the Quran mandates beating women, but a lot of Muslims of the scholarship, let's say... One second.
Yasmin,
now, let me finish.
Imam, wait a minute.
Can I just come in on the Sharia? Can I just come in on the Sharia courts, just to touch in?
We've kind of moved on a little bit.
I know you have, but it was important. I did ask to intervene at that time. When you're saying, is there a different system altogether? Not at all. We have the laws of this country. Sharia courts are not two parallel systems. They are there to supplement the courts that are already there. That's the first thing. And the second thing which comes in, those women who are actually going to the Sharia councils, I don't know where this court system came. Originally, they were named as Sharia councils. They are going on their own accord. Nobody is actually asking them to
Yasmin
go.
says
now,
not. Yasmin. But lots of people want to hear from you. And you made those points very well. Yasmin.
Right, there's a couple of points.
Because there was a key point you made there about going of their own accord.
There are two responses. Absolutely, Naz. Southall Black Sisters and others were involved in your personal case, and I was part of that. So, but we've seen the English courts develop. As society develops, the courts also develop. My issue is that we are setting up a parallel system. The other thing is it's reductionist.
That's exactly what I said. It's not a parallel system. It's supplementing the system. And that's why
Imam Sahib, can I just say, but in my experience...
You're going on your own accord because the same thing that you can achieve from a Sharia court... Let me tell you from a theological...
Can you let her speak? She hadn't finished.
You can actually achieve from a normal English system, from the magistrates as well.
Can I just...
So the khula that you're talking about, or the divorce, that can be...
Okay.
Right.
Ready,
can I just
steady,
please...
go.
Right, can I please make this point? I have got vast experience of women who do not want to go to those systems, but are pressured. OK? So that's one. I've also seen situations where men, both Jewish men and Muslim men, withhold religious divorces. And that can hold up proceedings where there is pressure, huge pressure on the women that I've worked with in terms of child custody and where that works. My whole issue with this is, why do we need a supplementary system?
No, wait a minute.
System not being perfect.
We spent some good time discussing Sharia a few months ago. We came back to it.
Nikki, we've got, when we talk about minority women, they have culture. We talk about minority women.
I'm going to
ask... Are we just Muslims? Are we nothing else? Do our national and ethnic identities...
I'm going to ask Naheed about this, and I will be with you, Raza.
On women specifically, not about Sharia.
Yeah, I want to talk about women. That's where we are at the moment. That's why I'm desperately trying to steer the conversation to that. So, I mean, we heard from Nazda, who was in a forced marriage, and saying a lot of these things are cultural, Nahid. Do you think that when we're talking about these issues, FGM, clearly cultural, nothing to do with Islam, forced marriage, clearly cultural, nothing to do with Islam, gender segregation, clearly that's, you know, some argue that is a theological issue, wearing the veil, some argue that is, many argue vehemently that it's not. But do you think there are many Muslims who believe it is a part of Islam when it's not? And if that is the case, there is a problem there, isn't there?
Yeah, that's the problem we are facing every day, because people don't have understanding about true Islam.
And if there are Muslims who believe that, you can bet your bottom dollar there's going to be non-Muslims who believe that.
Can I just say, Muslim comes from all part of the world. They're just not just Indian, Pakistani or Bangladeshi or Arabian. Muslims bring their culture with that.
And they confuse their culture with their religion.
Yes,
that's the problem. Who should represent that true Islam?
No, the true...
Because Islam, unlike
can I just finish that?
Please.
Because I've been actually working with women from all culture. I've seen they're facing these problems again and again. This is across the board. Also, actually, a lot of the women, they come to us, they wanted to go through the Sharia law, although a lot of the scholars within Islam said if you take a divorce from the court within UK, it's acceptable. And that's what they said. I've taken to them, but some of the women, this is their choice, because they want to feel comfortable to go to Sharia court. We've taken them to, because we didn't want them to face that oppression, because Islam doesn't believe in oppression or oppressing other people, and that's the message.
But there are cultural aspects therein, clearly, that you're saying is a problem.
Domestic violence is an oppression, and that's what
Raza,
I've seen.
Okay, Raza.
I think I've got to say, Nahida's giving, there's nuance. What you're saying is there is some coercion, but there's some choice too, and you keep shaking your head when there's choice involved. I think that's wrong. You have to admit there's choice involved. But regarding the point about women and subjugation of women or them not being denied rights, it's not a religious-only phenomenon, as Naz pointed to. It's something that exists in our society. So look at unequal pay of women in this country. No, but this is important.
Direction of travel,
no, but this is
you understand that?
No, but this is vital, though, because I do feel this is a part of white privilege, that it's any case of...
what does that mean?
Yeah, let me explain. I'll explain right now. It's if a Muslim commits a crime or it's subjugating women, it's indicative of a wider problem within their culture, their religion. But you've had someone from a white Christian background. So, for example, University of Lancaster said after the World Cup that they found there's a 38% increase in domestic violence cases after people watching football matches in the UK. Now, they're not all Muslims that are committing these domestic violence cases, but you would not say this is indicative of a white Christian problem, because you realise the criminal is separate from his ethnicity, from his religion. But when it comes to Muslims, it must be your religion. And we're tired of that. We're tired of that.
Yasmin, respond.
Are we partly to blame as Muslims? And just hear me out, please. Is that we were South Asian, back in the 70s, and then Salman Rushdie came, the whole satanic...
And Bosnia as well, of course.
But let's focus on the satanic verses, and that's where Muslim identity really came to the fore, and everything else was pushed back.
There's two bits to... Hang on.
And then you had community leaders who were then coming forward and saying, this is the identity box that we will fit into. They used that to gain
Please don't downplay Bosnia, because Bosnia... I'm not
downplaying Bosnia.
But you did say, let's just focus on Rushdie.
I said, because that was the trigger.
Very important thing.
Okay, let me just... Everyone's... Wait a minute, no, you can't shout each other down, you know? I'm telling you.
But it's not...
I'm telling you. You can't shout each other down. Sahar, you wanted to come in here.
Yeah,
tell me about the issue that gets a lot of people really exercised. Gender segregation in public places. Some people see that happening and they get infuriated. They see it as being, if you'll allow me to say, they see it as being absolutely contrary to Western liberal society. We're sitting here, we're free mixing, it's all fine. So
I'm happy with it.
Right.
I have no problem with it.
What's the argument for gender segregation? Because you know it's a lively debate, that.
It's not really big debate, and to be honest, it's not a topic that should be even discussed.
It's not a topic that should be discussed.
Because let me explain one thing. Muslims are being singled out for every single practice that they've been doing. So why is that? You know, when we talk about
But nobody
women
else
and
is
domestic
segregating women.
abuse, when we talk about domestic
I'll
abuse,
come back on that.
2 women
I'll be the judge
in
of that.
England are being killed every week. Yet we don't ever mention that. We don't associate it with any faith or race or anything.
We discuss
But when it
domestic
comes to
violence on a
Muslims,
regular
You
basis.
know what? They are
But you don't see the
forcing
white
segregation,
Christian
which is
problem, do you?
not true. There are like
It's
women-only
white, it's brown,
events.
it's black.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
but why is it
There are
different
like,
from
you know,
UK?
some Muslim women. Can I just finish? Some.
She gives is contradictory to the clothing you wear.
Well, she's allowed to wear what she wants
free
to
to
wear.
choose what she wears.
I want to. I take your point about some things that are underplayed and not reported on, but it is an issue.
But
Adam Deen, and Sahar, you did make your point. But Adam Deen, there are political meetings and people are separate. And Sahar says it's not an issue that should be discussed because there are other issues. Well, believe you me, we do discuss those other issues.
It's not
Sahar.
an issue within the Muslim community.
Well, it's an issue for other people,
there are
though.
like women-only events that women chose to organise it that way, and they wanted it to be that
Yeah,
way.
but in public
it is their
spaces,
choice
people-
to have
do you respect
Why-
people who find it
why-
offensive?
Why are we
No, but
talking?
why?
Okay.
Actually, can I just say we've developed a women consortium in Leeds, 13 women's organisations. They're not Muslim organisations. Came together and they wanted to be together. Why is it done?
Why
Women
is it
feel
problem?
comfortable, so it's not a
Tehmina.
problem.
They wanted to be that way.
Tehmina, what's going on here with this? Because it's an issue, we should discuss it because a lot of people find it offensive. A lot of people cannot understand why those find it offensive because there's women only this, there's men only this. But this is forced gender segregation. That's how people see it. Is it a problem?
It is a big problem, and for me,
It's a choice. She says it's a choice.
Is it a
choice?
choice when it takes place in a public university? No, it's not. It's one small group of people enforcing their own brand upon others who don't agree with it. And that's exactly why it has to be
When you
resisted.
say force, like, do they
and
have
then
like
when a public
policemen
body
outside
like
the venue
Universities
segregating
UK
them?
gives credence to narrow and conservative interpretations of Islam unchallenged,
What do you
then
mean
we have a
forced, though?
problem.
Sahar's just saying, and I'll come back to you, Sahar. Sahar's just saying, now, I don't know if you caught it, she's saying, what do you mean forced? Is the policeman outside? Are the policemen corralling it? Are the security people saying, you sit there and you sit there?
No, but the conditions are created so that anybody who dissents
But are
or who
these
doesn't,
conditions?
who
That's in your
publicly
head.
opposes this particular interpretation of Islam is treated as a pariah, and that has to stop. The sort of progressive interpretations need to be given greater space
It's not
in
a
Muslim
theological
discourse,
thing,
which
it's
is
a
not happening at the
preference.
moment.
Do you know why this
Sahar.
I said it's not theological things.
That's
It's a
being
preference.
disingenuous,
Some women
Sahar.
chose
It's a
to
little
be to that
disingenuous.
event.
Excuse me,
It's not
Excuse me,
forced.
everyone.
It's not forced. Look, I am.
Afshin, I'll be with you in a second. Sahar,
Yes. Thank you.
what would you like to say?
Okay, well, I wanted to say that forced segregation, it's not really a big issue within the Muslim community. There are so many mixed events that Muslim women are happy
Let
to
me
go
put this to you.
And
It's one of
sometimes they
those
have a
things. Let me put this to you,
preference
please.
only
I understand,
women
I understand.
events,
Let me
and
put this
it's
to you, please.
fine.
Some
But
people
why,
see...
Why
Please
are we
listen to me.
demonising Muslims? Why
No.
are we demonising
Please, I
them
want
for
to ask you a
certain
question.
practices? That is very
I want
right.
to ask you a question. Do you understand? Do you have respect for people who see it and see it as? I'm not saying I do. I'm not saying who see it as inimical to our society when they see the men and the women in public space, university or whatever, sitting apart. Do you respect their position?
What I want to say that we need a mutual understanding. I want to know, why did she come to this view? Did she really attend this event? Has she interacted with these women? You know, I wanted to know that. How did you actually conclude
Let
that?
her answer the question.
Because, like, a lot of women chose to wear with their own, chose to sit within their own group in a venue out of their
Let
choice.
her answer the question.
They don't want to
my
be with
university's
men.
Islamic
so why
society-
Is the problem that they don't want
Let
to
her
sit
answer
with
the
men?
question.
My university's
if you were
Islamic
in a
society,
restaurant,
I had to
sitting
sit
on a
in
table,
gender
Let her
segregated
please
event.
answer the question.
I had to sit in a gender-segregated event at a university Islamic society where I couldn't even ask questions because it was deemed to be immoral. I had to ask my question on a piece of paper and give it to someone to take up to the panel.
Audience in a second. Now, Sahar, please. Adam Deen.
Yeah, I think it's important to say
Let's
that
make it right.
the problem does exist, and it is a sort of obsession with sex. There is a type of reading of Islam that's obsessed with sex and the potential situation where you may, suddenly have some sexual encounter with some woman. To put it into context, this isn't a widespread problem. There is a small minority of Muslims that hold...
I agree with you.
Okay, but
Yes,
but,
you amplify.
no, what I'm saying is... No, what I'm
Please
saying
let him
is-
finish. Sahar,
if I
please
could just
let
say...
other people talk.
You really don't like me, but we can talk afterwards. But can I just say...
Adam Deen, audience in a minute. Please, let's all... Listen, I'll go put the kettle on. We'll all have a nice cup of tea,
I'd just like to speak.
Adam.
Yeah, I think it's not widespread, and that we have to sort of put it into context. But the point is that it's disingenuous to say that it has nothing to do with religion. There are individuals that believe that it's prohibited to free mix. Yeah.
We haven't heard from you yet. Good morning.
Well, it's interesting when... Well, it's interesting when one of the biggest phenomena, you know, attracting Islam today is people that hijack Islam and are people like Daesh who attract our young people within this country. Yet young people don't get a say on platforms equally as many of the people do. And it's maybe because we believe they don't have a say. And I'm going to say a point which might make me get battered from both sides of the debate.
I'll protect you.
I think that there's a lot of valid points. I think, you know, we have to understand there are issues. And I think we missed a core argument. When we talk about what is British Islam, are we talking about, like Saeed Avasi said, that our mosque should be built in a British fashion?
No minarets, yeah.
No minarets and be built in a
Did you
British
find that
fashion.
bizarre?
No, I didn't actually. I welcome that. I think that will take away the alienation of Muslims, you know, but it shouldn't be something forced. Do we have problems with women not admitted to mosque committees? Yes, we do. Do we have young people, problems with young people not being admitted? We have problems in here. Nobody's denying it. But to wish-wash that, oh, well, I've been put in a certain perspective and I face this problem, let's change the whole of Islam. I think that is a very big assumption to make. And one thing I do want to say, I think it's very important that we remember, as liberals, as somebody who supports democracy, and the letter of toleration by John Locke, the difference between religion and state. So if in public spaces, I don't support forced segregation, but if there is a choice within religious settings, then the state is not to intervene.
That's different. That's different, isn't it?
We must maintain
You mentioned
that.
John Locke. It's lovely to have a bit of enlightenment on the programme, you know. Right, let's hear from the audience. Lady there, good morning to you.
Good morning. I think that unlike other religions such as Christianity, it seems that Islam doesn't seem to have a hierarchical system like a pope that can
Top down, yeah.
that can dictate what is right and wrong and what is haram and what is accepted. Therefore, as somebody that's a non-Muslim, how do I decide that somebody who is deemed moderate and using the Quran to justify their actions is a Muslim, and somebody, an extremist that uses the Quran also to justify their actions isn't? That's what I think confuses a lot of non-Muslims.
Yeah. Okay. Gentleman there in the dog collar.
To be honest, it was more
than... No, excuse me. Are you in front of you? Yes, sir, go on.
Well, I'm certainly confused about what is a true Muslim and otherwise. We're talking about British.
What denomination are you?
I'm Pentecostal.
Pentecostal, right. Do you welcome the Church of England bishops? Do you welcome that?
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, well, OK. I wasn't expecting that one.
Well, the counter question could be, which is the true version of Christianity?
Which is,
but exactly. We're not discussing that.
That's the question.
We're not discussing that at the moment.
Come back next week.
Yeah, that's another program. That's another
go on,
program.
sir. Yeah, had you finished?
Yeah,
I don't think you had.
I mean, it is serious. And, you know, what is the true Muslim? And we're talking about British Muslim, which should be distinctively British, which must be different to the Islam of Syria, where people seem to think that they have a license to kill. They have
that's not Syrian Islam, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, Syrian Islam...
That's killing people.
Yeah, so they have a license... This needs to be very clear, right? They think they have a license to kill, they have a mandate to murder... A mandate...
Syrian, that's not
true. Yeah, it's okay. They have a mandate to murder infidels. We're talking about people who've left Islam being murdered, but what about the infidels, right? And my question is, where do people like ISIS, where they get the oxygen, right?
Listen, do you know what?
Yeah.
We've got 10 minutes left.
Yes.
And no way are we going to get into the complexities of that situation.
I know, but
no, please, let me move it on. You've made your point. Let me move it on. And thank you for doing so.
I mean, we already established that there are a lot of confusion between what is cultural and what is religious. So this is the first point that I wanted to
Can we talk now about radicalisation?
Yeah, but again, I want to kind of tie this to something extremely important, which was actually ignored in the discussion. It seems that maybe there is an interest, perhaps for a theological revolution, which would all of a sudden make kind of Islam compatible with Britain. But I think most of the problems that we have among the Muslim community, actually, they're not theological, they are economic. I think the economy is the heart of the problem.
Yeah.
The very fact that 46% of Muslims live in some of the poorest and deprived councils in this country, this is the heart of the problem. The fact that over 24% of Muslims never worked or had the chance to work, despite the fact that the general national figure is only 4%. This is the heart of the problem. Yeah. And you really cannot primarily focus on the theological issues or only cultural issues when you kind of ignore the wider context.
Exactly.
When basically there is a huge sense of marginalisation.
Does that leave that marginalisation, that sense of isolation,
no, but
alienation?
it's not only about the cultural.
Yes, I understand. Does that lead? I want to talk about that.
Yeah,
now.
there are enough evidence to suggest that kind of economic deprivation. Basically marginalisation.
But that's not true.
Adam Deen. Of course, you can't completely ignore
Okay, you can't completely ignore it.
But that's not true. That's not
Deen.
true of Muslims that are born and bred in the West. They are educated. Stats show that the majority
but I just
from the UK
they are educated.
46%
of Muslims in this country live in some of the poorest councils in the country.
Let Adam respond.
Of course, there are factors. There are factors such as the power vacuum that has been created, the tension between Shia and Sunni, the invasion of Iraq, the pulling out of troops of Iraq. These are factors, of course, but to the exception of ideology is just pretending. When an ISIS person, a member of ISIS, executes someone who he deems to be an apostate and shouts Allahu Akbar, why should we doubt that it's motivated by religion?
Mubin Hussain, founder of British Muslim Youth. I want to talk about this. Do you know anyone, have you come across anyone, or do you know anyone who knows anyone who has been, do you think, drawn towards, radicalisation, extremism, and if so, why?
Can I just make a quick point? I think
it's a long question, but
It's a long question. I want to make a quick point on the last point. We've talked about theology and ideology, but nobody's mentioned that we had over 300 scholars worldwide come to Marrakesh and have a renovation, in a sense, about scholarly thought on minority rights in Marrakesh. And nobody talks about that kind of stuff. Why not?
We have now.
But on this specific issue, I think, the biggest problem we have is, look, personally, I still haven't until today met a single person. It's not a big phenomenon, but we have a problem because any one young person that goes off to Syria, even if it's a 16-year-old Talha Asmal making huge political decisions to go out there and make this drastic choice. But the problem comes is, why aren't we talking about empowering young people, including young people? If they're trying to, if ISIS are there, saying to Talha Asmal, a 16-year-old, you can fly all the way to Syria, and we're telling our 16-year-olds, you're not even allowed to put a tick on a box at an election. Have you seen the type of empowerment, the voice and influence that we need to give to our young people and include them into the debate?
It's the echo chamber of social media and the lack of critical thinking and just receiving one narrative and not another. Nazaruddin.
I must say that Dr. Afshan Shah, you mentioned a very valid point about actually we must look at the factors that lead to a person wanting to commit acts of political violence. Yeah. It's you've got economic issues, you've got social issues, you've got political issues. But I think this is where I take real contentions with people like Adam Deen, is that they want to focus on saying that it's a religious phenomena, because actually if you look at academic studies, I'll cite some, Professor David Mann's
come on.
Hang on, let me finish my
Let's be clear about
because it's important to include academia.
Let's be clear about
Adam, you'll respond to this in a minute.
Not yet. It won't affect your funding from the government, I promise. The thing is, Dr. Rizwan Sabir
we've been funded by the government in 4 years.
Nazaruddin finish, and then here's the plan. Here's the plan. Raz is going to finish his point, then I'm going to go to Adam to respond to it.
Thank you.
After that, who knows?
The thing is, so you've got Dr. Rizwan Sabir from Liverpool, John Moores University, you've got Aaron Kunani from America, you've got writers like Nathan Lean.
And they say what?
And what they say is this, that to say it is a religious phenomena is actually empirically incorrect. You cannot... there is actually no sound study that points to that. And the only people that push this sort of idea are those that sit with the government at the table in this country who say, yeah, you know what, it's nothing to do with you bombing people or supporting, dictators in the Middle East. It's all to do with the understanding of religion.
Even, it's more complex than that. Adam Deen.
This is a caricature of my position and the Quliam's position. We understand that there are many, many factors, but we can't deny that religion and ideology play play an important part. That's
So
just,
why I'm not part of ISIS? Why I didn't join it?
Whilst I was listening to Raza, Naz here made a comment that we're funded by right-wing.
We certainly have affiliations.
That's guilt by association. If you let me finish, that's guilt by association.
Let's not make it about this Quilliam think tank. Let's make it about what we're talking about.
That's guilt by association, and also, by the same token...
Excuse me, everyone. I want to talk about radicalisation, and I want the response to what Nazar Razim said, which was very interesting. And I want to hear more interesting stuff from Adam. Then I want to speak to Yasmin.
I said this before, that to deny that ideology plays a part is just ridiculous.
Who said
If you let me finish...
How the ideology is formed.
Let him finish. Language.
You have to understand the phenomenon of ISIS. It's not about just fighting against foreign fighters, ridding of them occupation of their land. It's more than that. It's that and a hell of a lot more. It's about living in this utopian Islamic state. And their gravitas comes from operating in an environment of Islamism and Wahhabism. They are touching upon these ideas to recruit young people. And to deny this is furthering the recruitment of ISIS. And may I just finish? Quilliam has been mentioned here, and I don't know why. Because you're part of Quilliam. We should be talking about ideas. A Quilliam Foundation is about countering radicalisation and extremism by basing it upon human rights. Okay, and I don't understand what problem that you have with the Quilliam Foundation.
Could you two discuss this later on? Yasmin, you wanted to come in. OK, Sheikh in a minute. Yasmin, what did you want to say?
I am really tired of this victim narrative.
Yes.
Of course there are pockets of huge economic deprivation amongst Muslims in this country, but we are not the only community. If you look at prison statistics, it's disproportionately African-Caribbean men. Stop and search is still disproportionately African-Caribbean men. I'm not by any means dismissing the experiences of Muslim people, but we have a political representative here. You've mentioned Saida Varsi. We have representation in the arts, in academia, in the political processes. We are not this downtrodden community.
We are there. Sorry. I am there to fight racism. I am there despite prejudice.
I am too, Naz. But that victim narrative is destroying our
It is fundamental.
And it is feeding
I am no victim.
I
am no victim. I am a survivor.
Wait till listen, excuse me, this little triumvirate's not working for me. OK, Sheikh.
First, I'm going to start off by saying I don't know why so much airtime's been given to Adam. Is that because
for goodness sake. Listen. This is a democratic forum.
Can I just
because people keep bringing up my name.
Oldham, Burnley, Leeds, Bradford.
Okay, all right.
We've been doing it for a number of years.
Brother, calm down.
Here we are. This is what happens.
Can I make this point? My actual point.
Yeah. I'm not paying your license fee.
And that's
the actual point.
And Nikki,
and he's a friend of mine as well.
And that
Sheikh.
Yeah. You were talking about radicalisation and extremism. That's where you stopped, and that's where I'd like to come in.
I didn't stop you.
Well, no, I said that's where
all right, sorry.
No, you didn't
it's
stop
good
me.
to hear... Hey, Sheikh, do you agree with me? It's good to hear lots of different voices.
Absolutely, we should.
Let's discuss with each other in a democratic, civilised forum.
Absolutely, we should. My only point was that rather than giving one person more time than others, that was my problem. Radicalisation, it does happen. Extremism, what is extremism? That's the next question. Where does it happen? I wish we all knew. Because the first thing that the government is trying to say is it's happening in the masjid, because you're coming from the religious aspect. The government is trying to say it's happening in the masjids and in the madrasas, and categorically it isn't, because there is not a single case, and MI5's leaked report to The Guardian and the Royal United Services reports to The Guardian actually gives credence in the sense that it's not happening there.
So Fazal, is it happening in bedrooms? Bedrooms, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where is it happening, and what's on top of the list? Well, right on top of the list it's coming, it's social deprivation, it's family breakdown.
20 seconds. You've got 10 seconds.
I've got 10 seconds.
And then I had to say goodbye.
Right, well...
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is...
Fazal? Make your point quickly.
You know, it's like...
Religion and religious institutions has nothing to do with it.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. Well, it was a bit quiet, but I hope you enjoyed it. Back on Twitter and online, it continues next Sunday in Southampton. Thank you very much indeed.